We are 1 month into my winter cocktail menu here at EJ's Wine Shop, and let's start sharing the cocktails that we are creating for here. Did something a little different on this menu. I didn't create names for each cocktail. I had a lot going on in December, and the last thing I wanted to do was try to create names. And people always ask me, like, what does this drink taste like? What does that drink taste like when you have like a clever name? If they don't understand cocktails, right? If they read the ingredients, they don't understand like how they're made, which is perfectly fine. Like, unless you're in this world, you might not know. I decided to take the path of, let's use the blueprint of what I made it out, or the inspiration, and just use that as the name. At first, there was a little bit of confusion because people would just read Martini, Negroni, Old Fashioned, and then stop there. And then I just wanted to make sure, but it seems like now people kind of caught on that, oh, it's a little different, but it's still the same blueprint, it's the same drink, just with different ingredients. So that's what we're doing with this menu. We're giving that a try and seeing how it works. And today, why not? I recorded this video backwards, so I've already made the drink. It is a White Russian. Of course, that would happen. Of course that would happen right now. I wanted to do something with peanut butter and bourbon. So I used good old reliable Cedar Ridge bourbon, infused it with peanut butter. I thought chai would be a good complement to that instead of just coffee. And then to kind of sweeten it up, it is winter, maple syrup. So we are going to create a maple foam for the top of it. As I spill more on myself, let's just get into the video. So here I am turning the bag inside out with a vacuum seal. It just makes it a little cleaner and a little bit better seal when trying to put food product in there. I am doing 75 grams of fresh peanut butter from Calico Bean. It's a nice little local shop here in Dubuque. Per 750 milliliter bottle of bourbon. Seemed to work out the best without being over peanut buttery. And here I'm just gonna go ahead and pour in the entire bottle of Cedar Ridge bourbon into the bag. Now I have figured out you should only do 1 750 bottle per bag if you have this specific system. If you do much more, it will leak and spill everywhere. Trust me, I've been there, done that. Now this particular sealer is a vacuum chamber. It uses science to seal it better than just a normal household food one. It uses physics to make it so the liquid doesn't spill out everywhere. It's pretty awesome. It is kind of expensive, it's like $350, but for how much I do here, it works great. And while it takes about a minute to seal it, I'm going to go ahead and start on the other bag. And there it is done. Like I said, it takes about a minute. And it is not great looking, but I test it to make sure it's not leaking. And yeah, it looks perfect. The peanut butter is definitely mixed in. And here we're setting up a sous vide. I find this is the best way to fat wash anything, just really infuse anything. It just takes up a couple hours, speeds up the time, and makes a great final product. Normally I would wait for it to come up temp, but the temperature was already 110 degrees. I'm gonna do 130 for 2 hours. And I don't mind that it sits in there for a little extra while it's moving up to temp so I can move on to other projects. Now we're gonna go ahead and make our chai. I'm gonna make 32 ounces. And this, for every 8 ounces, I'll put in 1 cinnamon stick. So I'll put in 4 cinnamon sticks. I'm gonna do 2 Star Anise, 16 clove. This is whole clove. And then we're going to do 8 Carmodon Pods. What you need to do with these pods is you do need to crack them open so the seed gets out. So I'm just putting it on a cutting board. I'm gonna take a knife and just kind of press down gently on it to break those pods open and then put everything into the pan, or pot, I should say. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the pot and kind of get it heated, kind of get those spices warm and maybe start releasing some more aroma into the mixture. Don't need to do very long. And then now here I'm going to go ahead and pour in the 32 ounces of water. The room is smelling wonderful with all those spices being warmed up. Once the water hits a boil, I'm going to go ahead and put in the tea. I should have just used black tea, but I accidentally bought chai tea, or I already bought chai bags from Aldi, so I'm not going to waste these. I'm just going to go ahead and use them. And hopefully the chai is a little more intense. But you kind of play around with it until you're happy with the flavors of it. So unfortunately, these are individually wrapped. I have to unwrap each one, and I'm doing 1 bag per 2 ounces. So I'm doing 16 bags total. I like it to be super concentrated. I don't want any flavor to be left behind when in a drink because I'm putting a lot of other flavors in there. I don't want the chai to get lost. And once I put all of them in there, I will reduce the heat to a simmer and leave it on there for about 12 or 13 minutes. And then it'll just shut itself off. And then I will let it cool down to room temp. Like just gives more of the flavor to combine itself and infuse all those wonderful flavors together. As you can see, I forgot to turn on my main fill light because there's a lot going on in the wine shop. I was doing this during business hours, so a lot of people are watching me. I don't really care that people are watching me sometimes. I get distracted easily and I forget to do things, and I didn't notice that the light wasn't on. So anyway, I'll go ahead and pour the tea into a big strainer, and then I am taking a spatula and trying to get as much water out of the bags as possible. Then I'm going to take my measuring cup, put tea back in there. It is going to be under the 32 ounces you started with. So all I do now is take warm water and I'm going to fill it up to the 32 ounces. Now we're gonna go ahead and make the cold foam. I had my ISI whipper in a cooler, brought it out, and this is easy. This works the best. If you don't have one, you can put it in like a little shake bottle and shake it. It just won't be as foamy and light. It'll just be a little heavier, which is also perfectly fine. So I'm gonna put in 10 ounces of heavy cream and then 5 ounces of maple syrup. I don't want the cream to be overly sweet. I just want a hint of maple syrup in the foam to give it a little bit more flavor and to work well with the peanut butter and the chai. Unfortunately, I don't live in an area with a lot of great options, so I just try to buy what seems to be the best maple syrup for this. But if you live in areas where you get homemade maple syrup, or not homemade, but right out of the trees, it's probably gonna work the best. Put the top back on, and we're going to do 2 charges here because I want that foam nice and airy and creamy. After each charge, I like to shake it to make sure all the CO2 is working throughout the canister and make sure all that heavy cream and maple syrup are getting combined. And here we're going to do 1 more charge, shake it, and then we're going to go ahead and put it back in the cooler to keep the cream cold, and it comes out nicer the colder it is. All right, now so we have a big 1/2 gallon mason jar. I have a nut bag, and I put little clamps on them so they don't fall down, and then I'm just going to go ahead and strain out the bourbon and peanut butter. There are quite a few big chunks in there, and we don't want them in there, because after this we are going to freeze the mason jar so the oil from the peanuts are frozen and not into the cocktail themselves. This is just kind of a process, and I end up doing 3 mason jars at the same time to kind of speed up the process, but you don't see me do that. I did that once I shut the camera off. Whew. I remember to turn on the light this time. As you can see, I have some of the peanut butter. It is a little bit frozen. It could have been frozen a little bit more. But again, just I want as much of that oil and fat out of there as possible. You could go overnight. I just sped up this process because I needed the mixture. Put it back into the bourbon bottle I was using. And yeah, there we go. All right, so we have that process finally done. Now it's time to batch. Normally I probably batch a gallon at a time, but today we're just gonna do 10. That should fit in a crew bottle or back into the bourbon bottle we used. But yeah, let's go. So it's gonna be 15 ounces of your peanut butter bourbon. 5 ounces of Mr. Black. Ten ounces of your chai. You can definitely use Demerara syrup. I like to use brown sugar 1-to-1 in this one. Just the brown sugar kind of gives it just a different type of caramel flavor without being as invasive maybe, or as not invasive, but as dominant as Demerara. So it's still, I prefer this over simple syrup. Just kind of gives it a little bit more flavor without overpowering it. 2.5 ounces of this. Should have done the syrup first. All right, then we'll go ahead and stir it together. Now we're not adding any water to this because we're going to fully shake this cocktail and dilute it that way. If you just want to be able to take out the cocktail and pour it right over rocks, you're going to add about 15 to 18% dilution to this of your total volume, but we're not going to do that today. Just take a funnel and pour everything right on in. All right, and there you have a riff on a White Russian using bourbon, peanut butter, and chai. I think now it's time to taste test, right? All right, so we're gonna do 3.5 ounces of the mixture of the batch cocktail. And just like most other shaken cocktails, shake hard for 10 to 12 seconds. We have our double rocks glass full of ice. Strain over. Now, you could probably enjoy this definitely by itself, but a White Russian has cream, so obviously we're gonna use the maple cream that we made earlier. Just took it right out of the fridge, it's nice and cold. All right, after a quick couple pics for social media, we have our White Russian. What I like about it is that the foam will start kind of, I don't know, melting's not the right word, but just start gravitating towards the bottom of the cocktail. We still get the nice foam top on top. I prefer not to stir it up. I like to have the foam, then the cocktail in this particular drink. And I mean, you definitely get the peanut butter and the bourbon. That's definitely the main ingredient in there. That little bit of maple foam gives it a little, cuts through the richness of the peanut butter. And then the chai just adds a nice spice level to it, like baking spice. So it's not overly power. The chai is definitely not the dominant flavor. It just takes a background to the peanut butter bourbon, which is perfectly fine. I think for this cocktail, it just kind of amplifies that peanut butter with the maple. So yeah, there is my White Russian for the wine shop. If you guys make this, let me know. Cheers.